We are live. Tom Ginn, Elevate Your Profit, and
Mark Gassert.
you know what? We're going to be right back. Mark, man, I am like a child in a candy shop. I start playing
you
that
get you
video.
get enamored by that loop, man. You're just going to town on it.
Man, I got a whole bunch of them here. We want to go through the loops all tonight.
No,
Just,
that's okay.
oh, come on,
I'm
man.
getting calls from Peachtree Corners out here, man. They're like freaking out. Who is this guy?
Hey, Mark, I hope you had a great weekend and you had a productive day today. And
Very productive day. A lot of things are happening for me. So it was an excellent day and very engaging day, talking to different people and doing what we're doing here, only on a different platform. But yeah, it's this thing's the next best thing to the telephone or meeting face to face, actually. So,
yeah,
for all you streamers out there, I really appreciate what you do. I'm sorry that I will say this out loud for all you grow livers. Yeah, I watch you, but man, my nose is to the grindstone and I can't, engage with you. I got to keep, hammering away and talking to people and making things happen. So that's what I've been doing, and it's paying off.
well, it's like anything else in life is persistency and consistency. It will all pay off. You learn
Right.
along the way. I just always like to share before we bring our guest in, and is what this platform's about. It's for that person maybe that's saying it may take my talent and my gift and my skills into the marketplace, but go into business for yourself. And that's a place a lot of people are reluctant to go. But we're out here to encourage people. And then those that are already the solopreneur, the entrepreneur, that small business person, our whole platform is to bring people, their business leaders, influencers have been down the road to
Right.
help you better understand what it takes to succeed in business. I've been in business for myself. I'm psychologically unemployable since 1983, and I've had many different businesses. And today, I'm the latter part of my business career, and is all around a passion and a love for things I'm doing. So it's not an
Man, I
easy.
thought you were just getting started, Tom. What do you mean, latter part? What are you talking about here? Latter part?
Well, a lot of people say, how come you're not retired? You know,
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't, I created a life I don't want to retire from. So I think that's the benefit of being an entrepreneur is that you get to control what you want for your life. But it takes
right,
work and it does take,
right.
there's challenges at having a job and there's a challenge when you go into business for yourself.
Yes, there
Just,
is.
it's really about what you see for yourself, that clear vision.
Sure.
But Mark, anything else you want to say before we introduce our guest? I'll do that.
No, no, I am looking forward to this one. Business diagnostics. There's so many different buzzwords out there. Strategic problem solving. There's another word, strategy. But I'm really curious and I say this very humbly. I'm really curious to see what Mr. Jeffrey Wolfe's going to bring to the table. And please feel free, anybody out there listening, ask some questions because,
Tag
like
and
Tom
share.
said, that's why we bring these people on here, just for you. And if something resonates, let us know.
Yeah. So before we bring Jeff in, I met Jeff back in July at an event at Remy El Batwari's. It was a foundation for the Napoleon Hill Foundation. A group of people were invited in and a mastermind for 2 days. And this is where I met Jeff. And we drove in, I believe it was his car, to the airport to see Ramey's airplane. So that was quite an experience. But
Awesome.
that's what I love about this type of platform and streaming is that it opens up doors and avenues that you would never been able to get into. So I encourage anybody out there, is consider being a live streamer, being out there sharing your message in a format that is sort of the cutting edge and where businesses are going. So, but I can't wait to bring Jeff in. Met him at down in Los Angeles, and he's now part of the Grow Live Academy as well. And so we are all kindred brothers here, trying to make a difference in the world through this platform. So are you ready to come in? He's laughing. I don't know if he wants to come in or now. We'll figure it out. Jeff, you're in, buddy.
Mark, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on the show today.
Yeah, well, thank you. Glad to have you here. So
21st century television, right? It's live and interactive.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. This is like I'll date myself. Remember that cartoon, The Jetsons? They would do that back in the day when we were kids. And I was like, you often wondered, will that ever happen? And here we are, we're doing it. Of course, I won't say how old some of us are, but we'll let that go. Somebody's probably out there right now saying, who the hell are the Jetsons? But it was a cartoon that came on Saturdays. I remember that.
I'm old enough that I'm experiencing something my father said many years ago. He looked at me and said, I still feel like I'm about 19 or 20 inside. and I look in the mirror and I think, what happened?
Hey, I'm going to give a shout out. Wes Wyatt. Yes. Good evening, gentlemen. Have a dynamite night and week. Wes, yes, you are the man. This is a guy behind the scenes, and he does his own thing too. Tremendous performer that he is. He and Randy Chafee are cohorts in crime on their Building Wins. So thank you for hopping on board here, Wes. We're always grateful for you to be here.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, thanks for being part of the conversation, Wes.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in. Tag and share out there. So that's another request that we have out there. We never know who we're going to touch with this on a replay or whatever. When it lands on the right ears, that's what we're here to do. Open expectations. So, Wes, thanks for jumping on, and appreciated our earlier conversation today. So
very true.
So before we get into your why, your story, and what you do, I just always like to open this up. And we'll start with you, Jeff, then Mark, and then what are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for waking up and listening to the rainfall this morning, and then being able to have a cup of coffee with my wife to start the day. It was a great way to start the day out. Plus waking up and breathing, trudging through another day, living it one day at a time.
Yeah. Being grateful no matter what's going on.
Oh,
yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. It's a friend of mine pointed out to me, said to say that things just can't get worse is nothing more than a lack of imagination.
Hey, I like that.
So shout out to Charlie Parker.
I'm going to pencil that one down. I'm going to make a Guinnism here down the road. I'll steal it from you.
So there's always something to be grateful for, no matter what's going on. Because it's just that's part of it. Finding what can I find to be grateful for. The opportunity to be on your show today, being surrounded by people that are making a difference, that are doing so much, performing at such a high level that it keeps me, forcing me to either, it's like, calls the question, am I going to step back or am I going to step up? And that's, that can be uncomfortable, but I'm grateful for that because it's positive force, positive pressure to take another step, get a little bit better, do something more, have more of an impact each day.
If you're not, if it's not painful, you're not growing. It's sort of like working out with weights. If you're working out with weights and don't have any soreness afterwards, you didn't have a workout, right?
Right. It's that last, 3 reps?
Yeah.
That are pushing it past the limit to really make the difference.
Yeah. Mark, what are you grateful for today?
Well, actually 2 things. And these are first one I'll get out of the way. Congratulations to the Black Knights of the Hudson, those that served in the armed forces. This weekend was the Army-Navy football game. And I have a couple buddies that served for the other branch, the Navy, but it's really a cool thing to see that game. If you've never seen it live, I told Tom this earlier, which I did. I had a brother that went to the military academy, West Point, and it's really kind of cool. And what you're looking at is primo individuals. They may not be the best of the best athletically, but these are the people that are going to defend and choose to die for our nation if need be. So I always keep that in the back of the mind when you watch that game, and the passion those guys play with is to the nth degree. And I will say congrats. It was a double overtime victory. It was a tremendous game, and they give it everything they got. The other thing I'm grateful for is yesterday I had to run some errands, and this is when the good Lord upstairs challenges you with patience. I had to go through Buckhead on a very rainy day on a Sunday, and Buckhead in a rainy day downtown Atlanta is not a place you want to be. But I was getting a little bit anxious. I had a little bit of an anxiety attack and had to breathe deep because my wife said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I just don't like being down here." And lo and behold, someone to the right of us almost said hello to us right in the side of our SUV. Thank God I swerved. We missed, and it's that time of year. What I'm grateful for is I have, I guess, the patience and foresight to keep back from folks and give them their space on the road, because everybody's on a mission right now to get from point A to B, because they're going to a mall or they're going somewhere. And so that's what I'm grateful for. Like you said, Jeff, I'm here. So it's not worth taking a bite out of the stress sandwich. It's just not worth it. And my thing now is I just laugh about it. Before I'd go ballistic, but pretty much I just laugh and say whatever.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. That's I'm grateful for every second of my life. I'm grateful for this moment, because how we look at this moment determine what's happened the next moment, and that stacks up in the future. Gratitude was, I always give credit to where being a personal development coach with Bob Proctor and John Maxwell and being schooled and tutored by some of the greats out there really taught me a lot. But I had one of my clients, Terrell Hunt, former quarterback of Syracuse, and he was projected to be a #1 draft choice in the NFL. And he first series, first game of his senior season, ruptured his Achilles tendon. That was the end of his football career. And guess what happened? Everybody was hanging on a shirt tail, disappeared. It's a big payday. Sure. So I found Terrell, started coaching him, mentoring him. He's an inner city kid out of New York. Great athlete, could have played Division I basketball. He was that talented. But he lost his support system. There's so many takers in the world. And I learned more from my clients than probably they'll ever learn from me. He recommended 2 things: Dr. Miles Monroe, The Power of a Vision, and I've created a speech that I do to businesses that goals don't work. He turned me on that, and he turned me on to Robert A. Emmons, Gratitude Works. And that is, we take gratitude for granted, but when we really understand the depth of gratitude and how to approach it, and this is the world record, and then we'll jump to Jeff, is the world record for writing a gratitude statement is 50 years, never missed a day, never replicated or duplicated a gratitude statement, and it was tied with a Y. I look at that, and I'm pretty disciplined, but I am far from that type of discipline.
Wow. And
I look at gratitude's done in my life. If I could just step my game up to that level, do you believe that person was walking this earth with a whole different perspective? Gratitude is a very powerful thing. So that's what I built my first live stream off of, was G-Force. G is for gratitude. So with no further ado, I met Jeff at Rami El-Batwari's event. The stage is all yours. I'm grateful that you're here and can't wait to hear the full story, because we never really had in-depth conversation about what you do and why you do it. So here you are. It's all yours, Jeff.
Yeah, but I got to say, after listening to the both of you, it's like, what else could I possibly add to the conversation?
Oh, not really.
That's a lot. No, but that's the essence of it, right? It really starts with just we talk a lot about what's the why, but it starts with that internal, not camera. I want to say camera because I'm looking at the camera, but with that internal emotional state that we have, what are we thinking about? Where are we coming from? And I remember as a kid, when we go on our annual fishing trip, a lot of the people that we would see when my dad knew them, they'd all gone through the Depression together. And, it's like, oh yeah, this guy's a sheriff now. He's getting ready to retire. These folks over here, they own a bunch of apartment buildings. This guy runs an insurance agency, and watching, the entrepreneurs were the ones that had the longer vacations, the bigger boats, were seemed more relaxed after, it took a little, get through that first decompression week, right? Seemed more relaxed. And, that wasn't my dad's path. And he talked about how during the Depression, he watched some of his friends, they invited him in on doing some business. He's just like, no, you know what? Times were hard. They were being frugal with money. He chose not to take that path, but he never, he wasn't negative about it. He's like going, look, he encouraged me to see what everybody's doing and get to know them. And it was a powerful message that I absolutely missed until I got 20, 30 years down the road. I ended up going to college because I wanted to get out of high school early, and they had a great job placement program on the back end because it was an engineering school.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, right. And it's just like, they're hiring. Great. What are we doing? I don't care. You're hiring. Good. Let's go. And I'd landed at Hughes Aircraft Company back in the day. And that changed everything because it was very much a Wild West environment from the standpoint of they're pushing technology. Some of the senior staff had actually worked with Mr. Hughes himself. There were still a few of those folks left around. It shifted how I thought about everything. And, one thing that stuck with me from my teens wasn't the message of looking at the lives the entrepreneurs had created with themselves. It was the message from a combination of misguided adults and probably my misinterpretation of what they were trying to tell me, which was, hey, you know what? They're 14. Love it because this is as good as life gets, right? These are the best years. And I'm looking around going, I'm in high school. That's not really a fun social experience all on its own. There's a bunch of other stuff going on around me. And just thinking, if this is as good as it gets, something's wrong with this program. And it was that sense of this is as good as it gets, and you don't have control over anything. Right? You can't be self-reliant. Right. And to your question, Tom, about why, I don't want people to feel like that. That's a big core of what drives my why, is to help people be in a situation where they're self-reliant, where they can find the self-reliance in what they're doing. And it just, it's been a wild ride since then. You were talking about, the ability to be able to use technology today so that we can meet virtually and we can have live stream sessions like this. Right. I remember attempting this in the 1990s. I was running a corporate team that we had. It was a company had 65,000 people. I had a team that I'd built that was people in different business units spread all across the country, and we were using video conferencing technology at that time.
Oh wow!
And it was obscenely expensive and horrible. Right? You'd be talking to somebody, and you're getting every other third word turkey, and we're just like going, oh man, are you kidding me? Something that still applies, I think, in today's virtual world, especially in 2022. We found that I had to put the team together once a business quarter for 2 days, not because we needed to do anything operationally. We could have done everything remote. That didn't matter. I needed to get them in the same space so that I could get them to break bread 2 or 3 times in order to hold the team cohesion together. Because being in different parts of the country, working in different business units with different chains of command and different priorities, what we were doing as a team started to come apart because the relationships didn't hold. Because we'd only see, we'd email, we'd see each other on video conference once or twice a month, and phone calls in between. And no matter how much time I spent smiling and dialing with them, I couldn't hold that team together without getting them in the same space. And that was what was interesting when we met at Rami's, where there were a bunch of people that I've met virtually, like yourself, and we finally got to meet face to face. And I was very aware of how much deeper those relationships went when we were able to do that.
Yeah, there's, like you said, there's nothing like, this is the closest we can do it, sitting across a table and talking, or sitting in a lounge talking, or at a bar talking, whatever the case. But success in life includes business, is relationships, and how you manage relationships. Bottom line, no matter what your technology, skills, talents, it's still, like you say, team building. It's all relationships.
Yeah.
It's all relationships.
Relationships and the ability to relate and communicate with each other. And it's like when we went to the airport, we had so much fun, and I appreciated with that. And once again, thank you for choosing Wolfe Adventure Tours. We do appreciate you choosing us. We know that you had many other options, and hopefully you had fun, because it seemed like there was a lot of laughing going on in the car on the way. So that was, we did this. We were going out to get to see Rami's plane that he was having the engines finished for. And we could have just drove out put some music on and drove to the airport, or better yet, put a podcast with an interesting interview on to listen to on the way to the airport. But why not make it a fun experience and really, laugh, get to know each other, make it something that's measurable, that anchors the relationship going forward.
So that's how we met. And since that, you joined. Now, you met Ken is that how you got linked up with the Grow Live Academy when he came into town?
There's a funny story there as well. I met Ken actually during the lockdown in 2020.
Oh, okay.
Because I got a text from Glenn Morshower, who was going to be live streaming with Ken for the first time, to, hey, join the show. And I was like, cool. Who's this Ken guy? Okay, if Glenn's going to be there, I fits in my. I didn't have anything happening at that time slot. It's like, let's go. And Glenn had accidentally sent out the green room connection for the live stream. So I was one of a whole bunch of people that were fighting to get into the green room. So I was like going, woo woo. How I met Ken is I got kicked out of his green room.
Okay. Good starting point anyway.
Yeah. So that was, it was just, I watched that and I go, wow, what's this guy doing with the live stream technology? He talked about Grow Live, and that was when I met Ken and got involved with Grow Live.
Yeah, that's neat.
And we shifted from, because I had done a radio show for a few years, doing interviews. Before that, in 2019, I'd shifted over to a TV show, took that show to a TV network that a colleague of ours was launching, and we were live streaming on Roku and Amazon Prime. Then the lockdown hits.
Oh my.
And thankfully, it's like people appear at the right time, right?
Yeah.
That was when his whole thing with Ken, when Glenn introduced me to Ken. And as soon as I saw what he was doing with the live stream, I'm going, okay, I need to be part of this. This is the next step. Because it really is 21st century television. It gives us the chance to reach people live. We can do interviews, we can do conversations, we can get questions come in. I've had a friend of mine that's been teaching in China. Actually, he was ground zero in Wuhan, teaching at the university there during the peak of the pandemic. And he would join in the live streams every once in a while, live from China, and bring us like some update. So it's that ability to have people join in that I already had existing relationships with, for one, and then to build new relationships with, for the second, was just, it was something that I was so grateful for at the time, because it filled a huge gap.
Right.
So you came out of high school you went to college for engineering. So
Yes.
that goes over my head. So, what concept
Electronics. You're doing electronics.
Okay.
This guy's analytical. We got to watch out, man.
Oh my gosh.
I'm a recovering engineer.
He's a
recovering
walking, talking AI factory. You know,
I'm a recovering engineer. I found out after working with real engineers, like we got to
real engineers.
I'll only tell part of the story. I'll maybe tell you the whole story offline. But they, when I was Hughes Aircraft, they called back one of the guys that had retired, and he was
Right.
on the team that had commercialized the laser. So I got to hang out with people like that, and it's like going,
neat.
okay, that gave me a new bar, a new context, and that was one of the reasons that right out of college I had such an inflection point experience. Because of the team I was on, what we were doing, the people I got to work with. I mean, my big dream going to college was I just want to make enough money that I can afford to have a couple motorcycles, ride on the weekends, do a few motorcycle, do the big motorcycle runs. It was just, to me, the job was just a means of funding a play lifestyle. And it had no dreams bigger than that. Next thing I know, I'm meeting the guy that basically helped invent the laser as we know it today. My neighbor across the street from me, who had been rehired in at the same time we've been roommates, he was on the team that created LiDAR or commercialized LiDAR, laser radar.
Oh, laser radar. Okay.
Because this was in 1986, I saw a video quality infrared system based heads up display in a car as a potential commercial application for the stuff we were working with. The problem was at that time, the production cost of the heads-up display was about the same as the retail price of the car. They wanted to put them in Cadillacs. They're a little ahead of ourselves on that.
Oh, wow.
I also learned another lesson that I learned there was the technology, the state-of-the-art technology that you can see is 20 years behind what's actually the state-of-the-art in the field someplace.
Yeah.
And I asked somebody from an AR, a facial recognition artificial intelligence company that he runs, and asked him if that was still true. This was about 2 years ago, and he goes, "Yeah, it sounds about right."
Yeah.
And think about that. It's like, dang, what we see is way behind what's actually
happening.
Yeah, it's not yet ready for commercial use, shall we say, because of capability or a lot of times cost. But being in that environment, because the company was very much like, look, we want you to run as far as you can. They had a internal on the computer systems that they had, and this is the mid 1980s, right? This is a bit ahead of what seemed to be going on other places, but it seemed normal because that's what I experienced there. I thought, everybody does this, right? Everybody can stay after work and take artificial intelligence courses, or can take it because they had all these different course offerings in advanced technologies that the company was actually working with. It's like, oh yeah, you want to learn how to what's the latest and greatest in programming for artificial intelligence. It's like, log into the system, start taking lessons. And it shifted my thinking, gave me an opportunity to go to business school, and that just completely blew open how I thought about my future. For example, for we had a marketing project. Our professor for marketing was the former CEO of Jacques Cousteau's dive equipment company, U.S. Divers. And hey, Robert.
Boom. Good seeing you,
baby, boom.
Brooker is in the house. Yes, Mr. Canada.
And I completely lost my train of thought.
You were talking about Jacques Cousteau. Jacques
Cousteau. Yes, thank you. U.S. Divers. And I loved the dive because pro dive equipment. I used their dive equipment. I was a water dog growing up. Watched Jacques Cousteau's commercial shows all the time. Learned to skin dive. Never transitioned to scuba, but learned to skin dive a lot when I was younger, especially in my teens. Went diving in the Great Lakes, which is about 55 degrees in temperature. So that's something to do when you're a teenager, because about 1 hour in the water and your lips are purple for the rest of the day. And that is some cold water. Anyway, so we had Dr. Carroll, former CEO. And I'm looking at this guy going, I never would have thought 10 years before that, when I was skin diving, that
Yeah.
I would be in a classroom learning from the former CEO of the company that made the equipment I used to dive. And as my capstone project for that portion of the program, I did a presentation on a business idea, and I came in with a stack. We didn't have PowerPoint then. It was all plotted over color overheads if you wanted to put the money in and go. And I came up with this unique idea. So, you know what? I printed out all of my stack of handouts, and the class was arranged in a square, and I was going first. I always like to go first or last. And they were going to move. Okay, well, we'll move everything so that, because we were having a discussion. We'll move everything so you can present from the front of the room. I'm like, no, leave it just like this, just like this. And I hopped over the desk, and people look at me like, what the heck is this guy doing, man? This isn't how you do it. And a few people were, and I'm like, no, leave it just like that, just like that. I'm like, oh. They look at the professor, and he's like, okay, let's see what he's going to do. And I did a 20-minute presentation in the round, talking to them. No handouts, no overheads, nothing. And talked about this business concept and why we were doing it. Gave them the story behind it. And I was so lit, and there's that energy because they're asking good questions, and I'm answering the questions, and I'm answering them. I'm prepared, and it's like bam, it's like on fire, and it's going, and the room's warming up, right? Because everybody's getting interested. And when I got done, I had 3 people that wanted to come to work for me, a buyer from a major retail chain that wanted to talk about placing orders, and 2 professors that are standing in the doorway going, "Yeah,
we need to get
don't worry
involved.
about the funding that's coming. The green lit on the funding to start."
Right.
And I was like, "Dang."
That's
Never
cool.
thought about life that way. It's like, I got a company, 20 minutes. I got a company. We're ready to go.
Okay, so I got to share this. That's a great point. So he says here, this is Robert. In grade 14 English, I have to explain that to me. The teacher suddenly exclaimed, "Hey, a fire truck," and jumped out the window. Okay, so that's a Robert Brookerism at its best. So Robert, you'll have to explain that to us. I don't, but it's okay if you don't do it tonight, but that's kind of deep.
Yeah.
So
crazy stuff happens. Crazy.
Right.
But it's those types of experiences that can shift what's possible just in a heartbeat, in a snap of the fingers. And that was another inflection point for me in the journey in those years. That's where I started thinking about the entrepreneurial path. You're ready to go, ready to start a company. And here's the problem with that. I was 23 years old, living a block from the beach in Manhattan Beach with a high paying job. Right.
Oh my.
A very attractive young lady that I was dating from South America. She was part of the project. And so that was kind of a package deal. So our relationship played into, let's start. We would have been starting the company together. And let me put it this way. Her family in South America was so well connected that long before I had never even gotten close to, and my now wife knows this story. So if you see this, she's not, our friends that know us offline, she knows all about this. This is a public story, but she assumed that we were going to get married. She's like, well, of course, you'll have the president and first lady at our wedding when we're wed. And I'm like, really? Wait a minute. When did we start talking about marriage? So needless to say that it didn't move forward as a business. And
at 23, I wouldn't think so, right?
Yeah. Well, and I had, and plus there were like so many bars to explore, and I won't talk about that too much, but it's just, I was doing that kind of lifestyle, riding motorcycles through the mountains. In LA, you can literally stand on the beach, look at the snow in the mountains, and decide, do you want to ski after lunch?
So you kind of were tooling around the Pacific Coast Highway, right? Manhattan Beach, I've been there more than once. So I remember they were filming. I don't mean to interject, but it was this time of year because I'd have to go to, every year I'd go meet this company, and they were a client, and they were filming Santa Claus on a surfboard for a TV commercial. And I'm like, my wife says, "What are you doing? It sounds like you're outside. There's people." And they're playing volleyball, and everything else was going on. She said, what are you doing on the beach? You could tell. I said, you're not going to believe what I'm looking at. There's a guy in a surfboard and they're doing some promo for a radio station and he's surfing. He's got a Santa outfit. And I said, only in LA, man. It was kind of cool to watch, what was going on. Even when I went downtown to some of the did some shopping there. There was a guy tap dancing, to entice people to come in. He had like shirts and ties, and it was pretty cool stuff, but pretty expensive stuff too. But it's just interesting to, see all the sights and sounds of what LA has to offer. When I was out there, I'd always pick something, but yeah, I can only imagine that's where you were when you said Manhattan Beach. So yeah.
So your transition to going from a corporate job, fringes, the right elements you did a presentation that you got to see. I think this is what I heard from you. You were emotionally attached to it and it went out. And now you see that opened the gate, your emotional attachment. Would you agree that's sort of got the process going?
Yep. My
creative spirit starts coming out at an emotional level. And
yes,
I think that's
absolutely.
The key.
And what that led to, so I was fortunate with, at Hughes Aircraft's support and suggestion, because I had an engineering undergrad. I went to Pepperdine for my MBA, study for my MBA. And the way the program at Pepperdine is structured, or was at that time, your capstone class that was required to take last was strategy. So during my strategy course, our professor, and again, I'm meeting these people that are professors that are just, I'm like pinching myself. I'm just some kid on a Harley from the Midwest, And here I am in my finance class. Our professor was the former chief economist for the Cleveland Fed. Our strategy professor used to do strategy for Unilever Corporation, and was currently the head of strategy for one of the regional banks here in the Southwest. So it was a great mix of practical and academic. And so to keep a short story reasonably short, working with that strategy professor from the banking industry, I got myself in a position where as I was going through that course, I'm also out looking for companies to buy. So I figured, what, we'll find, and we talked about it and explained to him what I wanted to do. And we tested it out, and he goes, okay, I've got some funding, called me in his office, got some funding to back us up for the right deal. What do you got? And we go through a list of potentials, and he'd say, okay, can you get a meeting with this company? I go, yep, we'll get it done. And I remember going to this guy's business. I had to drive my girlfriend's car because my car was broke. I only had to change in my pocket until the next payday. And I'm looking across the roof of my girlfriend's car at the door to this guy's business. My knees are knocking, and I'm like going, what the heck am I doing? I'm like 23, 24 at that time, and I'm going to walk through that door and talk to this guy about buying his business. It's like, wow. I'm looking at it and I'm going, of course, I was like full of confidence and bravado, right? It's like, man, every cell in my body is going, get your butt back in that car, drive back to your apartment where you belong. Right? This is insane. Who do you think you are that you're going to attempt this?
Buy a business, yeah.
I took a deep breath and went, what do I got to lose? I only got like 75 cents in my pocket. What are they going to do? Throw me out, steal my girlfriend's car. So I go walk in, the guy sat down, had a great meeting. We had a good conversation. We laid out a framework for what might work. So we had a little bit of back and forth over the next week or two. Somebody else did a deal with him for 49% of his company. And it was, frustrated. I'm back, talking to my strategy professor again. And he said, he goes, look, great comment that I never forgot. He goes, never feel bad about losing to somebody who's irrational. Because there's no way you should ever buy less than 50% plus one, preferably 51% of a business, because then you have no control. It's not your business. You're just a passive investor. because you don't have control. You can be outvoted. And again, it was another one of those, okay, completely shifted how I thought about things. And I finished my MBA program, went right back to riding motorcycles, hanging out on the beach, running the bar scene and along the beach, because I'm a 24-year-old living a block off the beach. And now I got my MBA, right? which has led to a lifelong effort to de-MBAize my language, because there's just so many. One of the things I learned from graduate school is that it really develops a need to use a lot of big words so that we can justify all the education. But that, it opened more doors. It opened different thought process. And I don't know about you, but I suffer, I think, from what could best be described as delayed intelligence. It's like I'll maybe experience something and then actually get the lesson a month or 6 months or 8 months later. I heard that. I think I heard it best. I can't remember who said it. And someone told me, no, go look. Wisdom is the information that you really needed about 15 minutes ago. So it's that learning afterwards.
So you got the emotional attachment to a business. So where did that lead you? Now you're still 24 now, and then still chasing the bar scene and all the good-looking girls in bikinis.
Allegedly.
Rumor has it, however.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a fun place to live and play in my 20s.
Sure.
Right.
It opened doors to being able to move around the aerospace industry for a number of years and have some incredible experiences. After a near fatal automobile accident, the kicking around the South Bay and the bars and whatnot came to a screeching halt.
Wow.
That's a whole nother story, but we finally got a handle on that aspect, which opened up a bunch of doors again. I got to be involved in company turnarounds. I got to be involved in like I said, it led to that situation I was in when I was running a team at a company, corporate level team at a company of 65,000 people. Another corporate team I was on, we won a corporate award. They flew us to corporate headquarters from everybody that was on the team in different parts of the company. And we got to have dinner with the board of directors. And they randomly selected the tables. And we got the head account, the lead counsel for the corporation, general counsel. Bunch of engineers sitting with the top attorney. Wow. And to his credit, he poked fun. He goes, "You must really be excited about sitting with the lead attorney." And we're all kind of looking at each other like, "Well, yeah, thanks for being saying it so we didn't have to not say it." And because other people were sitting with the CEO and the COO and the head of marketing, these the head of industry affairs. So they're the people that are dealing with the customers and government. And I just looked at him and said, "Look, you're at the top, you deal with the top people in the corporation. You're seeing stuff that we aren't. Can you tell us what your view is and what you see and concerns you as general counsel? Because we're technical guys. We're thinking about different stuff than you are. What is it that you would like to have us thinking about? Not just us at the table, but people at our rank and file in the company." And everybody kind of turned and looked at me and just went, "Huh." And in the back of my mind, I'm going, "Yeah, huh, where did that come from?" And we ended up having a great dinner conversation.
That's neat.
Somewhere I've got a stack, and I couldn't tell you what it was, but I've got notes boxed up in storage that were from that conversation. That led to being involved with launch system design. This is closing the entrepreneurial path, Tom. I got involved with launch system design. I was asked to run producibility for what was then the Delta 3 and Delta 4 launch systems, as we were involved in the product development of those. And it required moving out of state, and I had a tough decision to make. Did I take it because it was a move up or move out offer? And now I'm in my 30s. I've got a house by the beach.
He's never leaving the beach, man.
I never left the beach. I stayed I had never seen the ocean before Hughes Aircraft brought me to Los Angeles. And ended up living a block and a half off the beach. You know, it's like in February, I was using a pickaxe to clear the driveway to go to work. In July, I am walking to the beach and playing volleyball every night after work.
Yeah.
That was a thank you. I have come home experience. But it's just a nice area to live in, and there are people from all over. And I just stuck in that part of Los Angeles, you know, in that period. But I had to decide: am I going to, you know, do I want to go to Alabama, which was great? I'd been, you know, I had done some training for some of the design team there, and we really liked each other. And I'm like, man, you know, if you, anytime you want, we got a seat for you here. We'll find a place. And that would have been a great experience. I had an offer to go into consulting, which I'd always wanted to do.
Did you go to Alabama? Offer. Oh, okay.
I took the consulting offer. No, and the guys that went to Alabama are working for SpaceX now. Some of them, which you never know, right? You never at that time, commercial commercial space flight was it will never happen. The government will never let them happen.
Where in Alabama was that
Huntsville.
at, Jeff?
Okay. It would have been Huntsville, Alabama.
Yep, makes sense. Yeah.
And there's a whole, I could tell you a couple hours of fun stories around just that experience. But in consulting, I got the opportunity to do to create and test a supplier development program for the Air Force and the DoD.
Wow.
Working with National Institute. It was funded by National Institute of Standards and Technology, because in the 1990s, we went from 136 prime contractors in aerospace. Those are the people that actually sold directly to the government. Aerospace is mostly government work, to 9. In LA County alone, 450,000 high-paying jobs. I mean, we're talking top 10% of the income brackets were lost permanently, never coming back. And the question at that time was, look, and this is before 9/11, not long before 9/11, but this is before 9/11. And the question was, look, if we had to spool up our supply chain again, how would we do that? Because there were so many family-owned businesses, manufacturing companies that had specialties that without them, we really couldn't build stuff. You know, it's doing certain things with titanium for aircraft is a very unique skill. Bending parts into the weird aerodynamic shapes that you see on some of the stealth planes.
Yeah.
Very unique skill. Well, what happens if those companies go away? If we've got a company that makes a key part in a certain type of munition, and all of a sudden we need those in volume, what happens because when the company goes away, not only do you lose that manufacturing capability, the bigger problem is you lose that knowledge. We saw that with NASA. NASA finally got their space launch system up in the air. It was almost a decade overdue and 3 times over budget. And one of the problems was getting the rocket motors built, because we had lost that. We hadn't done it for a long time on that scale. They're building something huge. They're going back to something that's even bigger than Apollo 5 was back in the day.
Wow.
And it's like, well, who knows how to do that?
Can I ask you a question here? What was the average Hughes person that worked there? What the employee, what were they like? I mean, I'm not trying to be weird about it, but you said Hughes Aircraft. So, you know, what was your average worker like? I mean, curious.
I don't think there was an average, but think of it as a loosely confined asylum of all kinds of mixed nuts.
Okay.
You could possibly find.
Okay.
You know, because like, for example, when the Space Shuttle Challenger had its what we call an anomaly during launch,
right.
I had lunch with the office workers for the Hughes employee that was on that flight.
Oh, wow.
My boss, the guy that hired me into Hughes Aircraft, and he finished his career there. He was a political science major from UC Santa Barbara.
Really?
That played in a 50s and 60s rock and roll review act. Zoot suits, saddle shoes, hair slicked back.
This is like after hours doing this, or
Yes.
after
No, he
the
didn't do it
work?
on. Yeah.
Uh,
But it's just, it was such a, it's a little bit of a conservative industry.
right.
It-
I
and he-
guess
but
that's
he's,
where I was leading to,
but here's the
Jeff.
guy who's a fast
But
track
they're
on fast track
right.
management, right? There were so many people that were like that. You go, doesn't really fit. The guy that was the laser specialist that they brought back, who had
Right.
retired to Montana, looked more like a linebacker for for an NFL team.
Oh wow.
I mean, he was like 6'4", broad, super broad shoulders. We took him out and tried to drink him under the table, and I remember getting home at 3:00, and we're all butts dragging in the hallway the next morning. He's walking by going, "Hey, you guys having a hard start this morning, huh?" We're going, "Dude's 20 years older than us. How did he do that?" But it was,
Oh,
I mean, it was mostly just normal people that thought out of the box. I mean, there were some really, really smart people. I mean, some people that were at the 0.1% spectrum of human beings
wow.
in some aspects of the company doing stuff.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
So you were
but
exposed.
it was the framework. It was the framework that they set up. The culture in the company was, look, for example, that was the only company I ever worked for that actually had an onboarding process and assigned a mentor.
Oh, neat. Yeah, that's cool.
And I've worked for small companies and really large companies. And the only one that assigned a mentor that said, "Hey, here's how we do stuff here." Excuse me. Here, to be able to navigate the way the company operated. One of the company mantras that they taught us as we're coming in the door was, look, if you're right 40% of the time, you're golden. If you're right 60% of the time here, you walk on water. What company, actually, I mean, if you think about it, what manager in their right mind in today's environment would encourage that kind of behavior? Right? 40% of the time, it's like, man, if you're not right 99% of the time, we'll replace you with somebody who can get the job done. Right. But it was that there was some context to it, but they just encouraged pushing the boundaries. They encouraged exploring. They're like, going, look, we are the best. When the world has a problem, a technology problem. That was another Hughes mantra. If technology is not the problem, technology is not the solution. Right. But you got a submarine, and the tradition that they followed was, you got a submarine that's, lost a mile and a half down on the ocean floor, and you can't figure out how to get it up. Stand back. Howard Hughes and his team's coming in. Well, this was the team that did that for him. That was still moving forward. And it was a great environment.
That you just talked about was probably other companies' 90% tile standard, right? And because it forced them to, and I think that's the key in any business or a team, is in leadership. Boundaries are important and all that type, but creating culture, be creative.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not, otherwise a light bulb would never have been built.
Right.
And they aggressively promoted that. They had 2 employee suggestion programs. One was technical track and one was business track. And you could submit ideas, hey, I think this is going to work better. And if it got accepted, you won points. And as you accumulated points, they gave you a catalog, and you could use the points to buy stuff out of the catalog.
Buy stuff out of the catalog. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was at another company, and I'll say the name because they don't exist anymore, McDonnell Douglas Corporation, when I was there, from mid-level and senior management, I kept getting, "Oh no, we don't do the employee suggestion thing here because it's just too many ideas that are useless. It's just not worth our time to wade through all that crap." I'm like,
wow.
The golden
venture capital world runs on the venture capital world. The people that make trillions of dollars runs on the principle that I think it's either 9 out of 10 or 19 out of 20 are going to fail, and it's the one that hits, and they pour billions of dollars at that.
So Jeff, I do have to ask this. So you kind of had a mentorship. They had a process. So somebody was with you to help you because they invested time and energy in you. They wanted to see you succeed. They wanted you to stay there. Is what I'm getting at. Am I right on that or wrong? Like
yes. And they did encourage some moving around too.
Right.
Like, what, if you leave and come back, we like that.
Sure.
They're moving around too much. That worries us, but we want people to get experiences from other industries, other places, and bring those ideas back.
Wow. That's pretty neat.
So that's leading us to how you got exposed to the business. Now, what is your business? So what are you doing now, and how can we,
Well,
what would you bring to the market for those that are
it,
out there listening?
it's about value, which is so important in a high inflation environment. Looking at things like, it's different operating in a high inflation environment than what we've had for the last 30 years. It's like it was in the 1970s. And unfortunately, there's not as many people in leaderships and advisory roles that had experience in the 1970s.
Right.
There's a few things that need to shift. So it's like, how do we do that? And value is the key. What's the value you bring to your customer? Do you just raise prices like everybody else, or do you change your value offering? So they're going, you know what? People understand with inflation, prices are going to go up. But if you adjust your prices because of your cost pressures and bring more high value to your customer, who are they going to do business with? You or the company next door that just jacked up the prices for the same thing?
That sort
Or
of
like some retail, we're seeing retailers make the same mistake from the 1970s. They charge more and then reduce the size of the package.
Right.
exactly, and the level of service goes down with it.
Yeah.
Open up a bag of potato chips and tell me what you got in here.
Well,
A lot
Walmart
of
was
air.
the master of that. They negotiated with all the manufacturers. That's why they were cheaper. Cut a half ounce here and a half ounce here and a half ounce there. We'll price it the same, and people think they're getting a good value. In reality, they're paying per ounce what everybody else is paying in the market elsewhere.
Yep.
But you said some offering value, and I think in any business, what is the customer's experience?
Yes.
I see a degradation of this. You walk into any, I won't say all, but the biggest majority is when you walk in, there's no energy from the employees to welcome you and greet you and make you feel welcome and thanking you. How can we help you? You have to walk around the entire store now to find even anybody works there, let alone somebody to help
Yeah.
you. So
they're running away from you. No, particularly this time of year. Oh God, a customer.
is that what you help business do? Is that how can you improve the customer experience? That's part of the value. It's not just the widgets you sell or the service you sell.
Yes. But it's also it's identifying those opportunities in working with customers. What's the customer experience? What is it that the customer really, really wants and needs? How do they use when you sell something to them? What do they do with it? How well do you understand that? Because there's always opportunities to serve the customer better, which deepens the relationship, increases the revenue. Because right now, if revenue isn't growing at least 7% annually, you're moving backwards. You have to grow fast. You have to grow faster than inflation. Because it gets into that analytical stuff that's so. Statistics make my palms sweat. I love that stuff, but it still puts me to sleep at times. It's just like, oh no, really? We're going to dive into the numbers, but we have to dive into the numbers in a high inflation environment, because little subtle things like that can go, hey, look at this. We're growing 7% per year. Well, guess what? That's just because you've been putting your prices have been going up, because the cost of everything else is going up. And guess what? Producer costs are going up 11%. So your costs are probably going up 11%, while what you're charging your customers is going up 7%.
Your net margins are zero.
Yeah, right. So you got to watch so you really got to pay attention to margins. Got to pay attention to things like accounts receivable. How fast are we bringing the money in? How much variation is there around it? I worked with one company that their accounts receivable didn't look too bad for the industry that they were in. They're a manufacturing company, so
right.
They were at about 29 days. Well, when we dug into their numbers, we found out that 25%-ish of their payments were past 90 days. Inflation eats that money. If it's sitting out there, if inflation, just to make it easy on the math, if inflation is 10%, or let's say 12%, 1% per month, and it takes you 6 months to get paid, that money is worth
less,
6% less than it was. So they're more than happy to pay you late. because it's really is realistically costing them less. So that's outside, it's inside and outside. How do you make more value? But then what are you doing with waste and creating value inside the company? Are you paying attention to the right numbers? And something I learned from teaching statistics was, you got, okay, here's how long it takes to get something done, but what's the plus or minus around that? Too often that plus and minus can really create a problem.
People think there's so many moving parts to a business, and a lot of people don't recognize all the little things that affect all the way down to the consumer, that experience. And so working with businesses, you're helping them really better understand, how can I bring, what is my value, true value, not be afraid to charge what your value is, and what can you bring to the table differently than your competitor. Because you're not the only guy that does consulting, right? There are hundreds.
There's other. Well, wait a minute. Are you saying there's other consultants out there?
Oh, I had one. No.
Yeah, there's a lot of people doing good work.
Oh, yes.
But there's a lot of people that are doing good work.
Sure.
And it's about here's the uniqueness. There's 3 dimensions to value. What's the value to your customer? What's the value to your employees? What's the value of your company? The monetary, financial value of your company. And it's working with those 3 to really be able to grow effectively in the kind of chaotic environment that we have right now. And this is going to continue for a couple of years, at least.
Jeff, with what you just said, because I hear this all the time, and you were talking about statistics, and I'm going to bring up a touchy-feely subject, supply chain. It's always at the forefront of, like, I deal with companies that are in manufacturing in some capacity, and I said, how do you price things when you put together a proposal or a quote, or how does that work, regardless if they're small, mid-size, or huge? And they got to factor in a lot of different things. And then it's like, this quote will only be good for the next 3 weeks or a month, and after that, it's null and void. Because how long do you think we're going to go through this process with supply chain? I mean, it affects us all, whether you go to the grocery store, you want to buy a car, you want your car to get fixed, you name the industry. So what do you see? How long will that take? I mean, is that for the next 2 years we're locked into this, or?
Well, it takes 18 months just to bring a semiconductor plant online. So for using that as an example, because chips for cars has been a big challenge.
Yep.
So that's just to build it. Now to get it into the supply chain, there's more time. So we're if we ever go back to 2019 in terms of how things operate in the supply chain, it is likely, and I've been hearing this from smart money, like the investment funds and whatnot, where they're going, look, we don't see inflation and supply chain and whatnot settling out for 2 to 5 years. The thing that should be permanent to that is how everybody thinks about their supply chain. Right? I came out of manufacturing, got involved in product development, moved into other industries from there. So we got really big on just-in-time manufacturing. What's the minimum amount of stuff that we can, because it's so expensive to hold on to parts, products.
Yeah.
What's the minimum that we change? Those rules on the minimums have changed. And we're rethinking, because the risk in different places have changed. Some of it we probably could have seen coming in advance. It's like in Southern California, for example, one of the big things here is we need to do earthquake preparedness. We have earthquakes here in Southern California, so we need to prepare our businesses in the event that there's one big enough to disrupt. In the time that I've lived here in Southern California, there's been 3 big enough to disrupt things. Yet probably 80-85% of the businesses don't do that. They don't think it through. It's like, what happens if your staff can't, if you have a brick and mortar business, what happens if your people can't get to work for a couple of days or a couple of weeks? What do? Well, the pandemic and the lockdowns that came in response put that front and center and go, okay, now we're living that. What do you do? That type of planning will need to continue.
Yeah.
And that's something that we haven't done well, I think, is generally in business, is look at risk assessments.
Yeah.
So we need to look at, where are our international relations are looking tense for the, out as far as we can see the horizon. That affects supply chains.
Yeah.
Our
that
supply.
sort of goes back to what was taught to me several years. I belonged to a business organization here in the Milwaukee area, EIB, Excellent Business. And one of the things that my mentor and that we did was that most businesses are operating on what's going to happen next week.
Yeah.
And making all their decisions based on that versus what's the worst case scenario? Fire. I mean, we've had businesses that have a fire. What is that going to do? You just mentioned, fuel cost, or a disaster, a tornado, hurricane. What's your major institutions or companies generally have some sort of disaster protocol or plans. If plant B goes down, how do we move this? Where are we going to get our supplies? They're thinking beyond just their immediate vendor. They're thinking if that person goes out of business for whatever, maybe they get hit by a tornado in Florida. Your number one guy that makes the caps to your bottles, and you can't put caps on your bottles anymore.
Yeah,
most small businesses aren't thinking long term, and that could be the solopreneur. What's the worst case if market changes, money gets tight, all those things? How's it going to affect it? What is your plan A, B, and C moving forward to the worst case?
Look at what just happened last week in was it North Carolina? So imagine you have a graphic designer or someone as a solopreneur even, or as a small business with just a few employees and a few virtual employees spread around the country. If you had somebody living in North Carolina that was doing something crucial for you, that was in the area where, excuse me, they don't know exactly what happened yet, but there were several electrical stations that were literally shot up, and there were 20,000 people without power for several days. Right. And some are going to be maybe a couple weeks before they get it restored. What happens if the electricity goes off or the internet goes out for you or for someone that you rely on to do something for your business, and it's not going to come back for 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months?
Yeah. Hey, people were freaking out here in Atlanta for 3 days when we had that ice. I mean, you kid about, but those 3 days, it was pretty cumbersome, man. It's kind of a weird feeling because you really can't do anything.
Because how, it changed into, how does that affect what, as a business owner, how does that affect what you're delivering to your customers? If you have a 3-day disruption, what does that disrupt for them? And how many days of disruption does it take before they go, you know what, we've got another alternate. Thank you. If you ever get your back together again, call us maybe. And they switch to someone else.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I think our message here, we're talking, talking on a scope of, we're talking mega corporations and large organizations, but the principle should apply to Tom Ginn, who's a solopreneur.
Yeah.
What are the things that are required for me to be effective in my business? And what happens if there's a disruption of some sort? What happens if my condominium catches on fire? How do I run my business? Oh,
where are your files backed up?
Maybe I'll have an operation there. But
where are your files? Yeah, that's pretty good.
Right. Where are your files backed up? Basic business 101. Because my wife and I were laughing about that a week ago or so. We're talking, we know what to do. And we were walking through a quick mental audit of how well are we doing. And it's like, oh, you know what? I don't have a set. I have digital backups of everything. I don't have a third digital backup offsite somewhere.
Yeah.
Like I should, because what happens, if the offsite burns, you've got your digital set on site. If something happens, if your computer goes down, you've got the digital backup that you can use.
Yeah.
What happens if an employee spills a drink on a computer? What happens if you're rushing to a dinner?
Handed in the accounting situation, and you thought you had $500,000 in reserves. In reality, you had $20,000. What happened? Those things happen in business.
Yeah.
What's the worst case? I was Chuck Harris. He says most businesses don't have a plan, and we're talking small business.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario, and we need to think it through. I think that's an important message.
Right.
That anybody that's out there looking business, existing business, what is your strategies for X, Y, and Z circumstances that could affect your business?
In 2020, we learned two things. How prepared are we? How flexible are we? And those should be two massive lessons that stick with us going forward.
Yeah.
You know, do we take that time? Doesn't matter the size of the business, right? And I would think that it would be even more imperative because our mortgages, our kids' college, our cars, all kinds of stuff very immediately relies on
Your cash flow.
Our cash flow. What do we need to continue to do in order to protect that? Should something disrupt it? Because guess what? The sad truth is something is going to disrupt it. And just about the time you recover from that, something else is going to disrupt it. It's just what's the scale? Fortunately, we don't get this massive. One of my mentors owns and runs a hotel chain. He's like, we have 20 hotels with no income for 6 months.
Yeah,
because we're closed by government order.
And that
how do you deal with
that? It still takes maintenance and electricity and all those things to keep a building viable, right? You cannot turn off the electricity and air conditioning and heater because people can't come to work, otherwise the buildings fall apart, right? It doesn't take long for a building to start falling apart if it's not environmentally protected. So we don't even think of these in those terms. Jeff, we could, I think our message tonight is that we got to be prepared for all the circumstances that can affect our business. Whether we're a solopreneur, think it through. What would happen if your computer crashed today? What's your backup? Where are your files backed up? I mean, little things that I just went through this, my friend. I got one of those things that they got control of my computer and then wanted to blackmail me for some money. Oh. And had control of my computer. Good thing I unplugged everything. So, but it put me basically for 4 days totally out of business. It took me 4 more weeks to get all my files and everything back up and going, and my banking and all the things necessary to run my business. It took me 4 or 5 weeks, and it's just only the last 2 to 3 weeks where I'm going, oh my God, I'm back to norm. Some things I had planned for, some things I didn't, and so I was affected into a point where I go, what in the heck am I going to do tomorrow? Right?
Yeah. A couple of years ago, and it seemed for me, I usually get disrupted when things are going really well, and I get laxed, I relax a little bit in the wrong ways, or when I'm harried, something's got me kind of frantically rushing, and I was in a hurry. And I did something I knew I shouldn't have done. My computer battery was dying. I needed to get something finished. I plugged it in the wall in a way that it strung the cable in the air as opposed to looped on the floor, which would be nice. And I got up to I was like, I got something. Okay, I'm going to get a cup of coffee. And I get up and walk around the edge of the desk to get a cup of coffee. Bam, caught that. And it literally spun my computer across the room. It was in pieces after it got done bouncing around. Because I was in a hurry. I'm moving fast, and there it is. I found out how well I was backed up on files right then and there. As you're watching this, what would happen to your business if that happened to you or your lead salesperson or your accountant, the person that does your bookkeeping in-house? Hopefully you have an external CPA. But
you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, my friend, I
had to bring a really positive message to the conversation tonight.
Thank you for sharing during the holiday season. No, I'm teasing. Teasing.
Yeah, and happy holidays to you.
As people put the fear of God in them not to go shop or spend money, No.
Well,
but in closing,
high inflation environment, don't carry variable debt right now. Interest rates are going up. They're going to continue going up.
Right.
Strategic use is good. If you can get a variable rate loan, carefully with, financial professionals' guidance, take a look at that.
Yeah.
Maybe good to lock in some working capital.
Yeah. So we had a great guest last week talking about credit and how credit
Yes.
scores are figured in business
Right.
and all those type of things. So there's a lot of moving parts. We encourage people to, the information you shared today is we got to think outside the box, especially if we want to go into business for ourselves. So you got that emotional attachment and you experience that. You said, that's the direction I'm going to go. You probably weren't clear exactly what that looked like. So you got the bug inside your heart. So go with your feelings, your intuition strong, find that thing you have a passion for. Then when you go out there, make sure you understand all the elements of your business. It's not just because you can fix a car, maybe the best mechanic in the world, but what's your marketing strategy? All the things that we don't think about until we get in it and go, oh my gosh. So, and people like yourself that, are resources to plug into. Find
Right.
people that will guide you away from the problems. That's the key. How can they keep you having problems? That's what a consultant does. So, anything else you'd like to leave in closing, Jeff?
It's worth it.
Yes.
It's going to be a wild ride. It's going to be scary. It's going to be failure and failure. Oh, win, failure, win. But at the end, it's worth it because you have so much bigger impact. One last story, if I could.
Yes, you most
And
certainly
this
can.
is another big business story, but it affected as an entrepreneur and working with small businesses. This is always stuck in my mind. I had a Japanese electronics company whose name I'll hold back because they're like, you can either tell the story or you can tell the name. And I'm like, all right, I'd rather have the story. At the end of the project, my counterpart at this Japanese electronics firm sat down and we did an outbrief. Key lesson as an entrepreneur, do outbriefs on everything. When you do something, do like the military does, do an after action review, learn from it, apply the lesson. So we're practicing that. We sit down. He got into the conversation of how they picture their company 400 years from now. And I was like, we're struggling to look at next quarter. And they're looking out 400 years. And the whole company talks about this. It's in their company discussion. What do they want to be known for? How do they want to be viewed? Which also started a conversation for them before they could even do that. They're going, well, what can we know about 400 years from now? What can we say about that? And it boiled it down to the fundamentals of, what is it that they want to be known for? What impact do they want to have on society? And what's their legacy? And as entrepreneurs, we should be thinking about that because what's the legacy you want to have for your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids? How do you want them talking about you, what you're doing? And how are you threading that back into the business? How are you getting your team? How does that thread into your team's conversation as well? Because if you do that, you'll build a team that will walk across broken glass to be part of what you're doing.
Exactly.
Because they want to be part of that mission, and you can have a conversation with them about how being on your team for a season, whether that's 5 years or 50 years, helps them get where they want to go in life, and how their vision gives them, if they don't have it, you can help them get clarity and then align those two up. And man, oh man, you can do stuff. That was one of the things in Hughes Aircraft. We were proud of being a little bit nutty in pushing the envelope in a set framework, so that things didn't get out of control, and it was all done respectfully.
Yeah, that's great advice. Is that 400 years. No one knows
awesome.
what 400 years is, but it causes the creativity to start working ongoing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key. Then your awareness level goes up because you're thinking forward and you start seeing the changes and you can respond versus react. I think it's what that 400 years does is we're going to keep our minds open because we know nothing's going to be the same as it is today, tomorrow. Right.
Yep.
And then
you've mentioned several times from the heart, you get things fired up from the heart. There's a key to doing that. If you're looking out that far, you've got to see, what does that look? What do you want to be known for You know, if nothing else, just think, how do you want your grandkids to talk about you?
Yeah.
What are those values? Put those values to work in your company, because the values in your company give you the framework for making decisions. The decisions create behavior, and that behavior then creates your company culture.
Yeah.
And that'll attract your employees and your customers.
Well, my friend, I look forward to. We always like to let our guests know that you bring a lot of value.
Sure.
Just what you're thinking. We, have you back again, because there's so many moving parts to what you do and what we're doing. And our whole goal and mission is to bring back people, the talent and passion and the things that they're doing to make a difference for that business person out there. And that is we put envelopes on that, what that looks like. But Jeff, I really appreciate
thank you.
what you brought to the table tonight. And we sort of did impromptu, but I think it came out with some sort of direction. So I appreciate you being here. Mark, anything in closing?
Man, I think when he comes back again, I want to hear some Howard Hughes stories, if you know any, about Howard Hughes, or if you worked alongside of anybody when you first started there, if they knew the man himself. But there's been quite a few things written about Howard Hughes. But no, I really appreciate you mentioned something from the heart, and that's what it's really all about. There's a gentleman out there that wrote a book, Selling from the Heart, and Mr. Larry. And, he talks about that incessantly throughout the book, which I'm reading and just studying it. And I think anything you do, I even challenged some umpires about, umpiring baseball from the heart. I mean, I started thinking about it. It all makes sense. Like in baseball, they say your approach, and what you were talking about, your approach will attract or repel people, to come work with you, for you, partner with you, that type of thing. And people see it and they're like, hey, this is the real deal here. You can't fake it either. So I thought that was really nice. And it's good to talk to a numbers guy, but I felt really comfortable. I was getting a little nervous because you're such a brainiac, but you put it on a third grade level, and it is from the heart, Jeff. So, I mean, I could listen to you talk about business, and there are some people that are like way up here, man. They're like demeaning. They don't mean to be, but they're just so way up there. But you can relate to people. Yeah. You're very analytical, but you have fun doing it. So that's what I notice about you.
Thank you. It was really an honor to be able to talk with both of you tonight, Mark, Tom. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we'll have you back if you like, and
love to.
Yeah, okay. Well, I tell you what, this is our protocol. We're going to put you back in the green room.
Uh-oh.
You got the green room. You got visually the green room.
He does. He's there, man. See it?
It is a very plush green room too, by the way. As you're watching this, you want to be a guest on this show because they do this right. They take good care of the guests.
Yeah. All right. Well, just hang tight for a moment. Mark and I are going to wrap her up, and we're going to put you in the back room.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
There we go. Jeffrey Wolfe. And I got some things I like to talk about. I did a lot of scuba diving down in that part of the world. So
well, he talked about
anyway,
other things on the West Coast there at Manhattan Beach, which I won't get into, when I was younger. But yeah, he had a good time. I
appreciate what Jeff talked about today, and that we covered a lot of things. His little journey when he found his emotional attachment, he recognized that's the direction he wanted to go. So I think that's critical for anybody out there. Find that emotional attachment for your purpose and your why. Yeah, and everything else will work out if you're open-minded. You got to stay open-minded. Yep. You got to be looking forward long-term. Seek out people like Jeff. Get mentors. Just like you said, in the company he was with, they had a mentor. How many companies do you know that has that built into their culture? Very few, if any. Okay. So, Mark, anything else?
Oh, that's it. I enjoyed this evening, and I just want to wish everybody. I know we're getting down to the wire here, all you fourth quarter freaks out there, but it's that time of year, and think about other people, and you have a show. It's about gratitude, and that's what I'm trying to do day in and day out. It's not about me, it's about you. And there are people that, from a business perspective, that aren't doing as well as they'd like, or maybe you're, not where you want to be in life, but be grateful. You're here, and it's tough to keep a positive attitude sometimes, but it's all about you. It can be done, and you just got to make up your mind when what hits the fan, that you deal with it and you move on.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I tell you what a day. I had a great day, and I'll share a few things with you when we're off air here that you'll be jumping out. You probably won't sleep tonight. Okay. So with that all
That's
said,
good, man. I had a great day from what I do during the daylight hours. So, that's good to hear. I'm glad,
well, let's close out with our last corporate sponsor. We opened up with Be Connected.
Uh-oh.
Now we're going to close out with ASEA, and I'll let you do the ASEA thing before I play the closer.
ASEA, it is the Greek word, and from the sea, but ASEA to me is about your cellular health. I'm not going to make any claims medically. That would be wrong and not proper. But I can tell you truthfully, for me, because of what I do other things. And, I've introduced it to some umpires, etc. And it does work. I've seen guys put that stuff on their knees, and their knees don't hurt anymore, the gel. It's a great product. It's a great organization. People that are in it are very sincere from the heart, and they don't beat you over the head and say you got to do this, thus, and so. And
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the best way I could describe it. It's something that's not going to go away. And if you're serious about your health, that's all I'm going to say. You need to check it out. I mean, I was a skeptic, and it's good to be skeptical. But once you start taking it, you'll be amazed what it does do.
Yeah, it's skepticism forces a person to ask questions, creates awareness. The problem is, don't be cynical. Just
Right.
don't be cynical in anything in life. Be open-minded.
Right.
Opportunities around us all the time, and we just need to be open-minded and be willing to ask those questions that are relative to how can it benefit me. So, well, Mark, let's do this. I'm going to do the closeout with the water thing, and we'll just go from there.